What's up everyone, welcome to this channel. My name is Ari and let's talk about what UX design is. UX or user experience is the way a user uses, interacts with, and experiences a product in order to complete a task, and how they might feel about that entire process before, during, and after using that product. UX can also be found in so many different shapes and forms. For example, anywhere from a mobile app to a desktop app to nowadays in augmented reality or virtual reality, all the way through to a very simple product like a watch or a desk or even like a packet of chips. Now, why should designers, people, and businesses care about user experience? User experience can go in a couple of different ways. It could go great, which could mean that it solves a real user problem. The user is happy about that outcome and they are delighted. They would most likely return and use that product again, and not only that, they would actually recommend it to other people. Also, if they are constantly pleased with the experience they have with this product, they are more likely to create this emotional attachment to the product and a brand, and therefore they are more likely to recommend that product to others. Now, this is good for businesses because returning users means that returning business. So not only they solve a user's problem, at the same time, they generate more business. Also, in some cases, user experience literally saves businesses. For Apple, for example, the iPod and the iPhone is a really good classic example of this. On the other hand, bad user experience doesn't solve your users' problems, and at the same time, it is most likely to frustrate them. If your user is frustrated, they are less likely to keep using your product. They would forever be looking for another competitor who does a better job than you, and at the same time, they would go out of the way to not recommend your product to others. And as you can see, this could potentially be deadly for the business in some cases. Now that we understand the importance of user experience, let's take a look at what user experience designers actually do. In its most basic form, user experience designers identify users' complex problems and try to solve them through the life cycle of a product. Life cycle because every product has a beginning, middle, and end. A good classic example of this would be the glass versus the plastic ketchup bottles. On one hand, the glass arguably looks better and more expensive, but on the other hand, plastic, even though it doesn't necessarily look as good as the glass, it is a lot more useful in order to get the actual sauce out of the bottle, which is what it was designed to do. But in order to design a simple product like this, there is a lot of thought that goes into this. So let's take a look at the product lifecycle. In order to purchase this bottle, a user might actually head over to a store. Once they're at a store, they need to figure out where the sauces are. Once they've figured that out, they now need to figure out where the ketchups are and make a decision on which ketchup bottle to go with. This is where good branding and design comes into play. In order for the bottle to capture your user's attention, the bottle needs to look good and stand out, but at the same time, it needs to look like a ketchup bottle so it doesn't confuse the user when they're about to make that decision. Also, depending on who your target audience is, your product can look expensive or cheap. The labeling of the product is also very important in this case because labels usually contain more than just the branding. They contain the information that your user might actually require to read in order to make that decision. Now, the middle part is probably the most important part of the user's experience. So let's say that a user has finally made the decision to go with your ketchup bottle. Congratulations. But this is the point where they actually get to experience using that bottle. So you might need to answer questions like, can your users, without looking at any instruction, buy that bottle, bring it home, and immediately use it? If they need more information, is that easily available to them? Can the bottle survive a fall? For example, if it were glass, probably not, but if it's plastic, even if it does fall on a hard surface, it's not gonna cause too much damage. Once a user is done using that sauce, are they able to close it and store it in a designated area like a refrigerator? Did the design encounter for that? Is it easy to get the final drops of that sauce once you're past the middle point? And maybe you need to look at whether or not the bottle is actually easy to clean once the user is done using it. And then the end of the cycle is when you have to think about, what does a user do once they've actually finished using the product? Can they order another one online with ease? Can they recycle of the one that they currently have? Is there enough information for them to figure out how to recycle that product? And so many other questions that you might need to answer at any of these phases. In order for you to have a successful product, you need to find a good product market fit. One of the ways to do this is to use design thinking. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about what design thinking is in this video, maybe in the future. However, in order to find a good market fit, your product needs to check 3 boxes. It needs to be desirable, it needs to be viable, and it needs to be feasible. Now, a product needs to be desirable. In order to create something desirable, you need to understand the market and your users and their needs and problems. You need to think about whether you're building something that they actually need. Is that thing that you're building and designing actually solving a problem for them? Your product needs to be viable because you need to understand the business and its needs. Is the product viable to the business? Is it aligned to the business's core goals and business model? Can the business make money from this product? For example, does it make sense for Apple to make that ketchup bottle? Why or why not? And at the very end, your product needs to be feasible. Is it feasible for the business to build this solution or product? Does the business have the right resources like technology and manpower? Are they able to market it once they've built it? Are they able to maintain it and support it after as well? When you start answering questions like this, you start to connect the dots and find the right product market fit for your product. So now let's talk about what a UX designer might do from day to day. This is a little bit difficult to answer as every project is different and every company is different, but I'll try to create a generic framework of what you might experience as a UX designer. This is also very different when you're starting to work on a brand new product or a product that already exists and you're just making more improvements to that product. So almost every single project starts with a research phase. This is your chance to understand the problem, the user's goal, and the business's goal. In this phase, you might do things like researching who your users are, researching their demographics, potentially speaking to them face to face or through conducting user interviews. You might want to do some competitive analysis and see who else in the market does a similar thing to you and identify potential opportunities and threats. Then you need to get a little bit deeper into understanding who your user is. Every business has different user types, and one of your jobs might be to identify them and creating user personas around them. The whole point of a user persona is to design for a specific target audience. Through the research phase, you need to see who your typical user is. So you might need to look at their gender, their age, location, income, whether they're tech savvy or not, and other things that might be important for you and your product. Then you need to identify the problem they currently have and then the goal they're trying to achieve by using your product and other things that could be useful to look at. You then might need to create user journeys. These are journeys that your user will follow in order to complete a task. You might want to identify your user's primary goals by creating and mapping out a journey for them throughout the product lifecycle. You might need to create user stories. Creating user stories help you figure out the different situations that your user might be using your product by identifying scenarios of how a user might interact with your product, which then helps you to think about different environments and situations they might use your product. There is information architecture. The whole point of information architecture is you always need to think about how a user moves through a page or an entire app and identify the easiest way for them to navigate their way around the product. Wireframing or wireframes are a user experience designer's bread and butter. They come in different fidelities. They could be as simple as a hand sketch or they could be made on a computer. And the whole point of a wireframe is to visualize your solutions in the quickest way possible. They are easy, fast, and cheap to create and can answer things like, how will the layout look like? How will the user interact with this product? What features could I potentially fit in here? Am I creating the right hierarchy in order for my user to understand the product or not? Then there is the prototyping and user testing phase. Usually from your wireframes, you can create fast and easy prototypes and test them out with real users. This is a cost-effective way to test your product with real users to identify as many problems with your design as possible before handing it over to UI designers and developers to build. You need to remember that it's a lot easier and cheaper to make changes at this stage of a project. Once you've tested your solution with real users, it should give you enough confidence that you've created the right solution for the user. Usually at this point, you would hand this to a UI designer or a developer to implement and actually push it out to the market. Once your product is already in the market, you still need to keep a close eye on it through data. The more data you have about your product, the better you understand how users might use your product, and that way you could make better changes to it and improve it for the future releases. Now, if you're still sticking around, thank you so much. This is the end of the video. The whole point of this video was to give you a basic understanding of what UX is and what UX designers do. You might also have noticed that I didn't necessarily talk much about look and feel and aesthetics, and that's because that's usually the next phase of the project, and that is a UI designer's job. I will be talking about that in a future video, and I do hope that you enjoyed this one and learned a thing or two about UX design. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and share this video, as I will be making more videos like this about design and development in the future. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please leave them down below in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in the next one.